Dudley, welcome to the Entrepreneur Next Door. I know my tribe of listeners are going to be surprised. You have a musician on an entrepreneurial podcast, but they will figure out that musicians are business owners, they're entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Probably one of the most challenging ways to make a living. We'll talk about that in a little bit. I'm going to let you introduce yourself in about a minute. But before you start, I want to tell everyone how I met you. 3 weeks ago, I was at a brunch at an amazing restaurant on Long Island called Arlo, Arlo. And so wherever I go and there's music, I always have my iPhone next to me. And if I hear something I like, Shazam is right on the main screen. And I just hit Shazam. Boom, I got to grab this. And so I'm sitting there and I'm listening to music and I'm hitting Shazam, and Shazam's amazing, but it's not coming up with anything. And I'm looking at my wife and I'm saying, this stuff doesn't work. So I don't understand. So I'm turning my head back and I'm saying, holy crap, you guys in the back, it's live. So Dudley was doing this solo thing during brunch, playing the keyboard, playing the saxophone, playing the flute, playing guitar. There was a thing there where you can actually drumming too, I think. He was doing some drum thing. So this is how I met you. There you go. Dudley, introduce yourself.
Yeah. Well, that was such a pleasant day. A lot of times I get a similar sentiment from listeners that say, oh, I thought that was the radio playing something. But the way that you told me how you Shazammed it is unique. Yeah, so my performance that day and most of the time, I am a multi-instrumentalist. So I play many instruments. And that machine you're talking about is an MPC where I can load up drum sounds. And I have a loop pedal that allows me to layer all these sounds so I could sing and play and perform. So I am a recording artist, a multi-instrumentalist, a jazz musician, and just a lover of art in general and what it does for myself and for other people. And I've been doing this professionally now for about roughly 10, 12 years. And it's been a journey. It's been a challenge, but it's been a movie. I'm grateful for every single moment that I have where I can play music for people and myself.
Amazing. My personal story, I have two personal stories. One, I'm probably the most frustrated non-musician in the universe because I grew up on music, mostly classical, because my mother was a classical person and was always playing classical at the house. And at some point, I think I was maybe 11, she got me a piano teacher. And it's kind of funny how you remember certain things from your life they might not mean anything, but I mean, you look at it, actually it probably meant something. Right. And I remember that she was teaching me how to hold my hands on the keys. And she said, put your hand on your kneecap, both kneecaps. I remember that. And that's how you can just put it on there. And at the end of the lesson, I told my mother, I don't want to do this anymore. I didn't like her. Yeah, I just didn't like her. I don't remember the details, but I think she was probably too stiff and too tough. Which goes to, and I think you were also a teacher, especially in music. You know, if you can't connect with any teacher for that matter, right?
Yes.
And I kind of feel sorry because if keyboard is is definitely my favorite instrument, and who knows where I would have been. But that's my frustrated. Go ahead.
Tag along to that because I've learned that so much. I have been teaching for a long time. I've been teaching privately, but even before that, I used to, I was a camp counselor. I've always, kind of taught, and I actually went to school for music education originally. And I remember back when I was a kid, I had a math teacher. I always excelled at math. I loved math. I was in honors when I got to middle school. And I had this math teacher that gave us this crazy pamphlet to do over the summer. I came into class. It was just overwhelming. I was like, I'm dropping out. out of honors, I can't, I guess I'm not smart enough. And then I ended up having that same teacher in, general math, and it was just as frustrating. And so, um, and then, when you talk about therapy, they always say you got to have a therapist that you kind of respect and you have a connection with. Otherwise, you won't heed any of that advice.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with teachers. I always say, you don't really teach, you just facilitate teaching. We teach
Yeah.
ourselves. So I try to remember rapport is so important. And if you don't got it, if you can't make it happen, it doesn't.
Yeah. Well, 100%. And so that,
Yeah, you know?
yeah. So that was my super frustrated non-musician story. As life happens, I've always loved jazz. And
Mm-hmm.
then my son in middle school gets discovered by his music teacher. And he calls and he says, "This kid's very talented. You should get him a private teacher." So my son is an immensely talented saxophone jazz musician. Started with alto, went to tenor. I was on the journey with him from that day and going to private lessons. I would always sit in this guy's basement. He was giving lessons, and then he was picked for jazz ensemble, uh, and and then he had master classes. And I wish I remembered all the people that were teaching him. Some were saxophone players, wind instruments. Some were keyboard, drummers, bass. I was always there, sitting in the corner and part of the journey. There was one, and I'm always blanking out. There was one phenomenal bass player who played with all the big ones, and he was he's looking at the kids, and they were like, I think 4 or 5 in the master class. And he said, "Look, I wish I had your talent when I was this young,
Mm-hmm.
but I got to tell you something. If you're going to sit at home and wait for the phone to ring, you're going to die poor. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you want to go somewhere," and his words were, "You got to make music." That's the exact words used because that resonated with us. And he said, "Don't be arrogant. Be humble. Go make, if you want this, go make music." So I mean, he was a African American guy, played with all the jazz legends. He said, "I play weddings. I play cruise ships. I play in the street. I played and I played. Go make music and don't say that because he's so talented, it's going to happen to you." And it's sort of like the reason why, other than the fact that I completely fell in love with you as a person and your talent, musicians are entrepreneurs. And through my son's journey, who went to college for music, there was always an option. One of his teacher, Dev Pietro, was very, very influential uh, with his music career. And one day we sat down with Dave, and I said to Dave, "Everybody's telling us that you can't make a living as a musician. So what do you do, Dave?" And he said he played in a pit band on Broadway. And he said, "You got to do the pit band if you want to do the rest of it." So let me go back to your early years, Dudley.
Yeah.
Were your parents musicians? How did you discover music? Where was the point where? So first of all, were they musicians? Where did you discover music? And we all have a crossroad in our life where we commit to, this is me. This is what I want to do. Right. So go.
So my mother, not much. I wasn't raised with my father. I would see him maybe once or twice a year, but I grew up with my mother and my grandmother and my two other brothers. My mother, she used to play trumpet, but she played it up until high school, and she, I don't know how phenomenal she was, but she still kind of kept it around. She would wake us up on Christmas playing the trumpet or something like that. And but that was about it. I didn't get much abilities from my immediate family, but I think some of the earliest my earliest romanticizing of music was I had a Walkman. I'm not I look young, but I'm old enough to have that, right? I had a Walkman that I would walk to school with, and in it I had two CDs. I had Stevie Wonder's Definitive Collection, and I had Michael Jackson's greatest hits on there. And every day I walk to school, I'll listen to that music, you know? So, I definitely know that influenced me. My cousin, she used to braid my hair. I used to spend weekends with her. She babysit me. She would show me all this music, all these, classic, like, 80s, 90s hip hop and R&B music too. I used to listen to while I hung out with her. And then, just listening to music was always there. And then middle school came around, and I was around friends that we used to, we loved hip hop. We used to rap on the bus. We used to freestyle with each other and battle with each other. And then at the same time, I went to school in Brentwood, Long Island. We got to start our instruments in 7th grade. So I wanted to play the saxophone, but I had to do a year of the clarinet first before I go to
Yeah.
saxophone. So at this time, we're all getting the chance to try to use an instrument. Nobody had really given me an instrument before that. Nobody had put an instrument in my hands. It was mostly in school. And, before that, I played the recorder. I loved the recorder. So at that time, I picked up the clarinet, and I'm playing. I'm doing well in class. And then the next year, I moved up to saxophone. I can't remember when, but around that same time, I was into the piano. My mom got me a little keyboard for Christmas, and I used to just pick out notes. And then my grandma put me into lessons for about a year. I did lessons, but I wanted to play basketball and video games, so I didn't really take it seriously. So and I always tell people that when I started writing and rapping, is the same time I started playing the saxophone and really playing the piano, I guess. But I kind of put the piano off to the side, and I took the saxophone all the way through, jazz band, marching band. I did it all through school. And I, at the same time, I've been writing music. I didn't learn how to produce my music yet, but I was writing music. I started picking up the guitar and trying to pluck out some stuff. I had no training. And then I got to high school. In high school, we had a music theory class. I was really good in school, so I got to pick whatever electives I want. So I'm like, oh, I could take this music theory. It must be easy. I took it, and it gave me another appreciation for music and love for the piano. I was like, I want to learn again. So I think that maybe my 11th grade of high school really put me back into, man, I want to dissect and create fully. So at that time, I was learning how to produce. I was trying to get the equipment I need to produce for myself, and realized, if I'm gonna have to go to college after high school. If I'm gonna go, I think I want to do music, but I don't really need a performance degree to perform. I think it'd be safe if I got an education degree. So I went for education originally, and all the time while I commuted back and forth to school. It was called Niagara College in Lower Manhattan. So I was commuting back and forth, and I was playing in different funk bands while that's happening. I was going to open mics while that's happening. And I was teaching lessons. My stepfather, who my mother remarried when I was in my senior year of high school, he owns a music store. So I used to teach in the music store, work in the music store. So even then, I did everything I could in music, everything I had to in music, teaching. I was fixing and selling instruments. I was working on my own music. I was playing with other groups. And since then, it's just evolved more and more. And I've just stayed steady with all of those things, I think. And I was showing you earlier my friend, my good friend, my partner, Diego, and his work. Me and him grew up together, and we kind of have kept each other on this track and supported each other. And kind of going back to what you were talking about with your son and his experiences, is that I realized that making music or making money or having a business in music, I would say art is hard to make money in and find opportunities. Entertainment, it's not that hard. It's not that, I would say it's hard, but it's not impossible. And that's what I wish people would have taught me when I was younger, when I knew for a fact what I was going to do, is that, hey, man, you can figure this out. You can make money doing this. It's okay. There's a million things you could do in it. Maybe that means you're a music producer or a manager. You work. There's so many things in music that you can do to make money, and those we call gigs. But as a performer, as an artist, as a creative, you don't always get a chance to write a score for a film. You don't always get to do a performance piece, and and move a crowd, and you don't always get to record on a global album or something like that. So, and I've always said, Diego and I, we always have these conversations, is that whether we're in a cardboard box or a mansion, this is what we're going to do. So once we kind of know that, then everything else is icing on the cake. That doesn't mean don't be wise with your money and with your business, but that means that prioritize what is important to you, because like your son said, I can't do it. I just can't. He probably could have made great money doing that one job. And there's many artists and musicians that do, but if you can't do it, you're not up for it. It's going to, take your soul away. Why do it?
Yeah. And I mean, you talked about there are opportunities to explore as a musician, but and I'll keep going back and forth and comparing, entrepreneurs and small business owners, which you are. They're not coming to you, right? You have to go get them, right?
Yes.
So there was a guy I hired many years ago as a sales guy, and his email address was "I sell to eat." He was a salesman, but it's fine. But the same thing, the principle applies, right? If you want to eat, you don't have to sell, but you have to go find their opportunities, but they're not coming to you. You have to go find them, and you have to hustle, and you have to be humble. And
everyone's a salesman, right? Everyone's selling something.
Yeah, it's just, it's like, because this is my 27th episode of my podcast, or actually maybe more, because I have some people that are about to be released. But the recurring theme among all entrepreneurs is you have to sell to eat. You could be brilliant. You can create a mobile app, or you can create some sort of technology, but it's not selling itself. Somebody has to go out there and share it with the world. I don't like the word sales because it has so much negative connotations, because we always get exposed to salesmanship. To me, is like you go to a car dealership. That's the worst sales you ever want to be exposed to. That's not sales.
Sales shouldn't be deceit. It shouldn't have that association, but it does, unfortunately. I always think a good salesman educates, right? Oh, why am I paying so much to have you play at my wedding? Well, let me explain. Why am I paying so much for you to record on my album? Well, let me explain. I think education is the most important part of sales. But, some people that maybe they don't know the product, maybe they can't justify the cost. They just want the cost, but they can't justify it, or they don't have the ability to communicate it. That's when their other option is to deceive and tell you something that's not true about the product.
Yeah, so that's a negative connotation about sales, that you manipulate someone to buy something from you they don't need, or you make them pay more than whatever. I almost like dismiss this, because that's not sales. To me, sales is the final step, the transactional piece, right? At some point, we're going to sign a contract. You're going to give me money. But what happens before that isn't sales. It's a connection. That's what marketing is about. And like you said, as a musician, and here's a lesson for Dudley, who's incredibly smart. If somebody listens to your demo tapes and they come in and listen to you perform at a wedding or at an event, right? Which is what I did for my own wedding, my kids' bar mitzvahs, right? You go listen to the person you're going to hire. And if that person says, I really like you, but why is it so much money? Walk away. Because if that's the thing that somebody asks you, if what they focus on is the money piece, not the experiential benefit of having an event and having somebody with that kind of talent change everything about the event. It could be a bar mitzvah, it could be a wedding, it could be a brunch, it could be anything. If you focus on the money, it's not the right client for you. Sometimes we compromise. I get it. But
I would even because we're talking about events, and I think that's really for a musician, for vendors, right? In that situation, I would be acting as a vendor, right? You have, it's a very lucrative business. There's a lot of opportunity in that, but ultimately it is an experience. When you came and seen me at Arlo, it was an experience. When, if actually I saw you about a week or two later, you were having a shower upstairs, it was an experience. I think that all these sensory, whether it's taste, smell, sound, all these things heighten your experience and help the room connect with each other.
Mm-hmm.
That's the goal. It should be connection. Now, sometimes I'm not in full control of the experience. I'm just a piece of the experience. So, I do my best to encourage connection first with me and the audience, but also for the audience and the audience. I would hope that they want to connect with each other. But I also don't own maybe the restaurant or the event that I'm a part of sometimes, which is where the artist, sometimes has the ability to create the concerts, create the experience, from end to end, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that the focus should be on what experience do I want to have. Maybe if your daughter's getting married, what experience do I want her to have? What experience? If and I'm very happy to say, oh, you don't like my song selection. That's fine. Maybe there's someone that maybe I could recommend someone that you will like, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I think that's a good tell when you go to a car salesman and he's like, oh, you don't like any cars? No problem. Well, if you need anything, let me know. When it becomes, what can we do? It becomes desperate. You can feel that. You can tell that you're not really trying to connect me with anything. You're
Mm-hmm.
trying to connect my wallet first, so.
So you decide that going to college for music education, i.e., become a music teacher, which, by the way, as my son was going from middle school to high school, many of the people that he was hanging out with were music teachers from different schools on Long Island. Uh, a couple of them were really good in repairing saxophones, and they made good money. But they all kind of got together at this bar. I forgot where it was. All the music teachers get together there. There was a band, and they
Was
were
it a
all,
nice,
was it Islip? I don't remember where it was.
nice jazz club, but it's not there
Yeah, but
anymore?
also that's where all the music teachers would just go have fun and play music and invite their talented students and let them play whatever. Did you ever finish music education or decide it wasn't for you then?
Sometimes you just can't. It's just odd how things work out. So I had finished all my courses, all my credits, and at this time there was a lot of new requirements for education. They called the Ed TPA, which has been done away with now. It was around the same time Common Core came around, and there was just new certifications that you needed, or exams that needed to be passed in order to get the certification. My school, unlike other schools, because it's such a small school, they require us to get the certification before graduating because they want to have their music ed or their
Mm-hmm.
education program to have a certain amount of graduates with certifications. So as opposed to other schools, you graduate, you get your certification later. So I took an exam, I passed one, I took an exam, I failed it, I went back, I think I failed another one, and I was just like, I know that I could keep, figuring out how to take this test and get my degree. But it's going to cost me time and money. And at the same time, I'm performing. I'm doing so much in my performing that I'm just, and I really look at it. I don't think I want to teach in a public school setting at all. My brother, he's a, special ed teacher and just tells me a lot of the difficulties and the red tape that he has to get through just to do that. So I just realized, I don't even know if that's really the path for me. So I'm just going to take a break for now and just continue to do my music, my performing. And if I want to go back to school and finish it off, I'll do it. And then I got a call maybe 2 years later from one of my professors. He said, look, I want, I want you to finish and get your degree. How about we switch you to performance? Take whatever requirements you have to, and you'll be out of here. So it was, and I did that. And I can always, if I want to, go that route again, I can always go back and get those exams and things like that. And I've, been blessed that I have been able to even go into public schools and do workshops. And, um, you know, I think that's really why I wanted to do education, is just to make an impact to the youth. And I realized I don't necessarily need to do that in a public school setting. It was never really the benefits that excited me.
Mm-hmm.
It's the experience. And I guess it's forced me to become more entrepreneur. because this school is a business. It's a you know, it's a business that you work for, and now I've just chosen to be the business that I work for, and sometimes other people work for me too. So
Yeah, I
um,
mean, if you're teaching, you have to play the game, and you have to abide by rules and regulations and goals and all this other stuff. So you mentioned before that you guys were sitting in a school bus and having like a rap
yeah,
contest.
yeah,
I mean, I want to say I like hip hop, but I don't understand it
yeah,
because obviously, right? In my universe, I think Eminem's the only guy that broke through and was able to maybe introduce it. But forget him for a second. Who's considered the father of hip hop, by the way?
well, let's
If
look at
there
the
is
godfather
a
of hip hop.
Godfather, yeah.
You go back to, I would say, I always refer to two people, Gil Scott Heron and James Brown. So, Gil Scott Heron, the revolution will not be televised. So, he's speaking over this, and he actually played keys. He played a lot of instruments too, I think, Gil Scott. And, he was a poet, citing poetry over sounds. And then James Brown, hit me, give me some, can I get some? And he's just talking over the beat. So from that, you transition into clubs really, and parties, and DJs taking all these funk records and taking the I think honestly it should be this history of hip hop should be common knowledge for people, and I think it will be, just like jazz has become a little bit of common knowledge, but it turns into the DJs finding all these, they call the break beats, that, like, James Brown, boom, it's just the drums and percussion. And people at the parties are like, hey, every girls over there, boys over there, they're MCing. Just like at a wedding, you got to MC. But then instead of, let's say, hey, to the bridal party, they say, let's say, hey, to the bridal party, today's the song, we're going hardy. And they start rhyming, and they start rapping, and they freestyle. And it just organically births out of these environments. So that's, I always attribute rapping, and which rap is just a piece of hip hop. Hip hop embodies, the DJ, rapper, graffiti artist, breakdancer. That's the four
Mm.
elements of hip. So, and I understand there's and that's where I find my place now, is that there is such a disconnect. There is such a unfamiliarity to hip hop and to rap, especially on Long Island, and in some of the rooms and places that I perform at. And in the inverse, there are maybe a younger audience that has no real understanding of jazz or classical, or these kind of, I would say, avant-garde, musical styles. They didn't have money for lessons. They never had that experience. They never had. So where I'm at, I think, is a place where I can kind of educate and bridge the gap. So,
So
but
how does a kid from Long Island, and I don't know him, but you describe him as a hip hop legend, Talib Kweli or Kweli?
yeah,
Yeah.
Talib Kweli. Uh-huh.
How does a kid from Long Island, and Brentwood is I'm in Woodbury. It's like 15 minutes away.
Yeah.
How do you come across a hip hop legend? How do you get entrenched into that universe? Because obviously you have talent in hip hop. Some of your music is rapping to music. So how did
So I think I get these questions sometimes, and I think first and foremost, it's just like any opportunity, right? So let's say someone says, "Hey, how did you become the CEO of a tech company?" Well, first you have to be somebody who appreciates tech and that works hard at tech, and then gets to know people, and then maybe you elevate to that opportunity. But you don't start as, yeah, I like, I'm in real estate and I'm chasing this, and or not usually. Do you then meet that opportunity and rise to that occasion? You're probably just not there. So first and foremost, I've always been entrenched by the music created by him and his contemporaries, in the 90s, early 2000s. When I was a kid, there was this video game. It was almost like karaoke, but for rapping. It was for PlayStation. And the hardest song on that game was one of his songs. And I remember once I figured out how to rap that song, it was like, oh, I mastered this video game, you know? And then fast forward, I had got a manager. My manager, uh, that's a whole nother story of how we connected, but he reached out to me about managing me, and we talked about it, and I contemplated on it, and I said yes, and we ended up working together for a long time, working on music. And he had a relationship with Talib Kweli, and he introduced me to him. I came to see him play a few times. Um, I was just acquainted enough, and there was an opportunity where he was doing he was doing 3 nights at the Brooklyn Bowl, and it was it was there was even extra guests like Funk Master Flex, a lot of legendary hip hop artists that were in the room and on the stage. And so we reached out. I had covered one of kind of performed and covered one of his songs before, and so we reached out and just seeing if it would be possible to open up for him for any of these shows. He ended up allowing me to open up for all 3 of the shows. So, which was, it was crazy because I was just like, man, it would be great to open for him one day. And then it was like 3 days in a row.
But
And
wait,
even
so Dudley, was that because your manager knew the guy, or because he listened to your music before? And because opening act for anybody is a big deal.
yeah. Well, before that, we had sent a my first project I sent to him, and so he got to listen to it, and he put it up on. He has a website where he sells music and books. So my it's still on there now. It's featured up on there.
Kweli Club.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So Talib Kweli in a nutshell is such a big figure in Brooklyn hip hop specifically, but uh, he comes from a family of 2 professors, very educated, and him and Most Def, or Yasin Bey, many people would know. They met at a bookstore in Brooklyn, and they later bought the bookstore, and they own the bookstore. So they're very big on educating, especially the Black youth in Brooklyn, let alone everybody, I think. And so that's why he started Kweli Club, where he shares music and art and that he appreciates. So that alone, when that happened, was such an honor. And so that, I think it just, little by little start to familiarize ourselves with each other. Um, and then, when it's time to ask for those opportunities, they say you have not because you ask not, but also you have to gauge and know, am I ready for that? Am I going to, as an opener, you're is to entertain, get everybody warmed up for the next guy. Am I ready for that? Do I have work that I could stand on confidently and feel that this is the right time and place to do this? So but I think if you're looking for advice into how to get to that, first and foremost, I say is sharpen your skills so that you're gonna have, if this is what you're gonna do for the rest of your life, you're gonna be in rooms with people, you're gonna be with legends. But if you are not a legend yourself, if you don't see yourself as that, then maybe it's not time yet.
Yeah.
So you get yourself to that. That's first and foremost. And then second of all, a lot of times I used to feel like, gotta get on stage. I gotta give this person my CD. I gotta get them to listen to me in order for them to give me that opportunity. And I have found so many times, time and time again, that the opportunities come a lot more simply when you meet somebody as a person and they meet you as a person, and they get to know you, then, you ask them, hey, can you come on my podcast and do an interview? And you're like, yeah, you're a good person. Sure, let's do it. I don't really care what it looks like. I can tell by you that it's going to be interesting and worth my time and energy. And also that venue, I believe well, I was acquainted with the venue too, and the staff of at that venue too. I may have opened up for someone else before then, but I've opened up for a lot of legends at the Brooklyn Bowl.
So you mentioned something about owning your skills. You got to be, maybe, can't be a legend. Legend is a historical thing when you look back at somebody's accomplishments. But I don't know if in the music world you come across Gary Vaynerchuk, or we call him Gary V, and super successful guy.
Yeah.
His thing is, if you're going to start a business, pick one thing that you're not just good at, but that you're better than most other people. Pick that one thing, hone your skill, and then you take that out to market. What's amazing to me about musicians is that I've been around musicians a lot because of my son. And when I listen to your music at brunch, I really thought it was playing on the speakers. And when I turn around, and there were a couple of songs. It was on the third one when I turned around and I said, wait a second, this guy's right back there. So
Yeah.
I don't remember coming across someone who is so incredibly talented like you are. And my podcast is, I'm very careful about not allowing my guests to use it as a promotional tool. I'm going to take an exception with you because I want more people to get to know you, go to your site, listen to your music. It's not for everyone, of course, but as a white guy listening to rap, I was always amazed by. I just said this to my wife the other day because we listened to something, and I said, "How do they remember the words to all this stuff?"
Right.
All right. I mean, a song has a song, and then a chorus, and then and then more words, a couple bars here and there, whatever. It's an incredible talent just to put it together, not for me to also remember, because these are all stories. These are stories with personal expressions. So for someone like me who still call myself a hip hop ignorant, I thought rap came from the streets, from people's experiences. Right? When they wanted to share what they went through, wanted to share their life. It was sometimes about positive things. Other times it was about venting frustrations, like, you don't get us. This is us. What is rap to you? Because you're a young guy, right? You didn't come from, I'm not going to use that word. You didn't come from the streets. You didn't grow up in
the rough areas, no. But in a nutshell, well, first off, I want to address a few things. So, because you said me as a white guy and my hip hop ignorance, I think also what people don't realize is that hip hop is an American art form, probably the most prominent American art form today. Hip hop, especially the hip hop culture. Rap music or rapping is an art form within that culture. It is, and it is an American art form. It has generated so much wealth. If we're looking at it at a financial way, it has told so many stories. It is like you said, complex. Sometimes it's simple, and it's the same as jazz. It's literally a continuation from jazz. Jazz, was practiced by, blacks, and it's created from New Orleans and these Creoles and these hot houses. If you were to go back in time and go into those hot houses and see, someone on the piano like this, and they're just playing, and someone's singing and clapping and everything's happening, and they're hot and sweaty and they're dancing and they're jiving, and someone's playing the clarinet, and someone says, hey, you know what? One day this is going to be celebrated all over the world. There's going to be universities and there's going to be Grammys and everything awarded to this type of music. They would say, you're crazy. This is what Negroes do in hot houses. And here we are. Same thing's happening in hip hop. And it's American music first. And I think in that same way, we look at jazz music. We look at the music that was made at that time. You have Summertime and the living is easy. This is the story of the Black American, you know, early at this time, right? The cotton's high and the living is easy. This is a Black story. But then you also have when I fall in love, it will be completely or I'll never. And this is a universal message
Mm.
that it doesn't matter where you're from. And then you go to hip hop and you have Biggie Smalls. It was all a dream. I used to read Word Up magazine, Salt and Pepper and Heavy D up in the limousine, hanging pictures on my wall every Saturday. Rap Attack, Mr. Magic, Molly Mall. And this is the story of a black man from the projects in Brooklyn. But then you have what's a good universal one? Oh, there's plenty. There's or like a love story. There's a Kanye West I love. He has
Mm.
Runaway. Run away from me, baby. Running away, things about to get crazy. I got a plan. And he's talking about how he's not really good at relationships. Very universal message, very universal. So I think the origin of art, it just is. But the art form doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the origins of it sometimes. So for me, what hip hop is just another art form of expression. If you want to express it through painting, through drawing, through clapping, through everyone has the ability to express themselves by designing a hat,
Mm.
by, designing a podcast. We are all, creating something. Now, but we all have to understand the language. You understand the language of backlighting and for subject lighting and audio technology. Not everybody has that knowledge. So the knowledge of the art form, the understanding of the theories, right? Why do these things work? Why don't they work? Understanding that. Um, I think it's just a fascinating art form, and it's fun for me. It is fun for me. If I give a sheet of lyrics to someone and I say recite it just how it is, they're not going to have fun because they might not have that same experience that I did growing up. It's because of my place in time, of where I was, where I'm from. And so, no, I wasn't from, the projects in Brooklyn, but I am from an area on Long Island that is very different than many of the other areas on Long Island around it. And I encourage anybody and everyone from Long Island to read up on redlining and how it has affected our community. So I don't rap like Biggie Smalls. I don't rap like Jay-Z because I am not Jay-Z or Biggie Smalls. Um, and I don't play the saxophone like John Coltrane. I'm not John Coltrane. So when I was in school, I got to go to study jazz in Italy for a little
Mm.
bit, and it was an honor. But I also was not someone again who had lessons, who had, I was around kids who were in conservatory since they were 6 years old. So I was super overwhelmed, and I was beating myself up because I'm like, well, maybe this is not. Am I doing the wrong thing? I'm not supposed to. And then I had to stop myself and I said, wait a second. Nobody here knows how to rap or produce music or do many of the things I do, and they don't have a completely different story than myself. And it was a great lesson for me to not compare and just do what I believe I'm supposed to do. So if you believe you're supposed to explore the world of hip hop, I encourage you to do it. Don't let anybody get in that way of it. But
Mm.
if you try it, it's just like food. If you taste it and it's kind of bitter, you don't like it, then maybe your palate hasn't developed yet. Go eat what you like, and
Yeah,
eventually,
it's everything that goes into every single move, right? And to me, it's boring. Listening to somebody rap might not be my thing because it's a lot of talking. But
Mhm.
if we took the time to really understand, first, read the words so we understand what it's about,
Yeah,
understand where it's coming from, it's actually intriguing, right? They're they pretty much share experiences.
yeah, that's exactly it. And you know, and in kind of piggybacking on sports a lot of times once you look at the history, you start to gain more appreciation for it. Where it comes from, I seen this one guy who had this really weird stance, and because before that he was just not hitting anything, and then he had just changed to this really weird stance, and he started hitting, and it's expression, but it also is technique. It just is. And I was saying, a lot of times I look at it now, especially, growing up as a kid on Long Island, I grew up in Brentwood. Where I came up, we were surrounded by hip hop music, rap music. There was not a lick of country music. There was no classical, barely any jazz. This is what I was engulfed in, R&B music, and also it's our generation, my generation. I'm 32, so I know that there's somebody that grew up in Northport or Dix Hills or Comac that also was around this music. But the difference is that we were making this music. We were in the cafeteria banging on the tables, making music, going into a friend's studio and trying to make it sometimes. So, and also there are some really legendary hip hop musicians from Brentwood specifically, let alone these other marginalized areas on Long Island. So it's just ingrained around us, and that's why my perspective is different than someone outside of my community. So, but I growing up on Long Island and like not really connecting, having a difficulty connecting with people who don't have the same experience as me, has forced me to kind of try to understand it better. And so now the best way I look at it is like food. You think about, let's say I love beets, right? They're good, but you eat a beet and you know what it is, you know what it tastes like. But then I remember once I had an amazing beet salad for the first time, with the beets, the goat cheese, the dried cranberries, the pecans, and it was just, and you ate it and you didn't even think about what went into it. You just ate and, oh, it tastes good. And then you thought, what did they use into it? What did they make in it? What is the ingredients? Can I do this? So in the same way, I think first, it has to hit you. It has to, you have to just eat it. And if it tastes good, and I always say, you have to know how to taste it. Have you ever have like there's certain food that, you don't just mix it up. You got to eat it separately at different times, or you do mix it up. There's a way that you have to learn how to eat it sometimes to experience it. So in the same way with hip hop, I always say, because most people can't, the rap, it's very sometimes aggressive. It's fast. It's hard to take in. It's probably something you have to listen to many times to.
But that it's also language that I'm going to point to myself again. It's also language that we don't understand very often because we didn't speak like that.
Yes, the thing of it.
In our little privileged communities, right? So it might be offensive to some people listening to stuff, but I never looked at it as offensive. I looked at it, no, this is how we spoke. This is how we grew up, right? And when you use the N-word or you use some curse words, you can't get offended by it. It's a cultural thing, and if you want to immerse yourself and enjoy it, you need to understand where it's coming from and what it's about. Otherwise, it sounds like noise, right?
And you need to understand culture, and you need to understand art. You need to understand expression, understand that how to, and it's very complex because you feel like an imposter sometimes when you partake. I'm learning a lot now, even as a 32-year-old musician, is that, there's certain things I told myself I can't do because I don't do. I can't listen to because I don't listen to. I'm not from that. But you can do whatever you want. Now, how you sell it, you really should be very tasteful and really understand what that means, when you're benefiting from it. That's where it gets a little iffy. But when it comes to expressing yourself, make up your own words. Listen to everything. Take what you like, throw away what you don't, because what you like and you don't like today is going to change every day. Allow yourself the freedom to express and change and not know everything. It's okay to not understand why do they use the N-word so much and what does that mean in that culture. I don't know. That's okay. Don't get angry by it. learn about it if it frustrates you that much. And I guarantee you the answers are out there. You just have to do homework. It's everything is homework. You know.
So I'm kind of bringing us full circle because we're almost up to an hour, and you need to go create some good stuff. The recurring theme in all my podcasts, and especially lately, it's about purpose and meaning.
Yeah.
And we tend to think that business is different than other things, and it really isn't. And you demonstrated for almost an hour. Here's a musician. Of course, you're talented, but for people to understand, my son, as talented as he was, would come home, finish his homework, go in the basement and practice. And I'm not exaggerating, on a daily basis, 3 hours,
Yeah.
scales. And I mean, no one is that talented where they could pick up an instrument and become amazing. It does require practice, and your brain, the way the brain is wired, you're creating new synapses and new neuron connections, and that makes you. So it's hard work, right? Playing the saxophone and wind instruments, saxophone, clarinet, flute, which is the group, great, but then piano is different, and then you got to read the top line, and then the left hand and the right hand, and then drums, and
Say
it,
that.
it's not like it just happens. And so just like with entrepreneurship in business, you have to put the work in, and you have to constantly get better at it, because someone else who you don't know is probably as talented or more talented than you are. You just haven't met them yet. And one day they'll take the gig that maybe you were hoping to get. It's not going to happen. Okay. There needs to
Right.
be a higher purpose for you to choose a path in life that at the end of the day, you need to be happy with who you are and what you do. That's the key.
Yeah.
Because if you're miserable, you're never going to be successful, right?
Allow me, Jack. I read this great book. Or I didn't finish it. It's called The Three Pillars of Wealth. Are you
Mm,
familiar with it?
no.
Great book. But the author, I forget the author's name, but the first one of the I thought, hey, I could we could all use some financial literacy. But I thought it was just going to be just money, money, money as a business talk. But the most important thing, or the thing that I thought was amazing, he said, is that you have to make money, save money, and invest money. But the most important thing that you do,
Hmm.
or what's really important, is that you're passionate about those investments, whether it's property, stocks, a store that you open up, whatever it is. You have to be passionate about it, because otherwise, no matter what you do, it's going to take an amount of work. And especially just to get it to a place where it will kind of maybe run itself, which I think is probably not always possible. People have these expectations. I'm going to start something and it's going to run itself. You never know what's going to happen. But you have to be passionate about it, because otherwise you won't give it the attention that it needs, whether it's a rental property, whether it's whatever those things are. So even in business, it's about why, purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people lack that.
So what's the number one lesson you can take from your life at 32 that you can impart on? Look, my tribe is entrepreneurs and business owners, but they have kids, and I hope that this podcast is going to reach a bigger audience. What's the advice? Or my favorite question: if I gave you a billboard in Times Square and Dudley get to write whatever he wants on it for people to see it every day, what would be on there?
That's a hard one. I need more. See, I overthink when I write, so that I would take more time. But what I would say, which we've heard, and I think I'll piggyback off of that question of luck or hard work. I think we're all lucky. Today, us having this conversation, luck is easy. Everyone's got that. Hard work, not everyone's got. So when I was in Italy, one of my professors taught me about the 10,000 hours law, right? Rule, which I don't know I'm sure you've heard of, right?
Yeah.
It takes 10,000 hours to master something. That's what the belief is. And so if that was 100% true, how would you want to spend those 10,000 hours? If you could do whatever you want, and all it takes is 10,000 hours, then you'll find what you actually want. And even if you don't, you'll put the work in, and you'll get to the little kinks in the road that teach you where you're supposed to go. So I think uh, I would say uh, if I had to put a billboard up, I'd choose your 10,000 hours.
And sometimes you might spend the 10,000 hours just to get to a point where you say, this is not for me. Okay. But
Yeah.
it's not all wasted because the journey is
Yeah.
as important as what happens at the end. Maybe it's not for you, but you discovered something else. End of the day, you're in the bathroom brushing your teeth, and it's just you and you. Just ask yourself two simple questions. Have I been productive today? And have I made a difference in someone else's life? If the answer is yes and yes, put a big smile on your face, go to bed. If the answer is no, then at least commit to doing something better tomorrow. We can define productivity as pretty much, making the best out of our time, and we all are guilty of getting sidetracked. That's normal. That's the world we live in. The second piece, have I made a difference in someone else's life? To me, that's the key, right? And it doesn't have to be anything big, right? Uh, you make a difference with your music. You make a difference in how you come across as just a good guy that's happy, loves what he does, and shares it with the world. That's really what it's about, right? We're human beings. That's
Because not once have we asked each other how much we make, right? Not once have we asked that yet. I don't think most people feel comfortable asking that with each other. They ask, "How are you doing today? Where's do you have kids? And our experiences is the real wealth because knowing how much you make is not going to teach me anything.
Yeah, money is a tool. It's nice to have it for sure. It does open doors, but I always tell
Yeah.
people the story, and I'll end with that, where I was on a flight to London, sitting in business class, upgraded, don't get all excited, and the guy next to me. So it's two seats, and you get, how we talk to each other, and uh, he turns out to be a plastic surgeon in Miami, and he said to me, "I have more money than God should allow anyone to make.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even charge anymore. I just barter. I barter for boats. I barter for vacations. I've redone more breasts in Miami for celebrities and mafia people that you can imagine. I'm miserable. I'm so unhappy." And it's interesting that this is like a recurring theme a lot of times, like with Hollywood celebrities, actors, singers. They get married and 4 months later they get divorced, and they have everything most of us would want. You give your right arm to have 10% of what they have, but yet they're not there. And you're going to wonder what they miss. And so the answer is money is good to have, but are you happy with yourself? Are you living your life's purpose?
You have to and reassess and say, what do you really want? What are you doing for? Why did you get this yacht for? What are you going to do with it now? You got to
Yeah.
decide.
Yeah. I think at some point they just have everything they ever wanted and everything they don't need, and no goals in life anymore. There's no purpose to it. Then what am I doing? And there's one thing we can't do is stop time. We're all getting older. And the one
Yes.
thing you don't want to have at any point, but especially when you get to that nursing home, is look back and have regrets. So, Dudley, I am so happy I had brunch at Arlo. Uh,
Yeah.
and I am going to go out of my way to make sure that people get to know you. It's Dud Music, DUDmusic.com. Go listen to him. You can download and purchase his music. And if you have an event where you
Yeah.
need a multi-talented artist to enhance the experience of whatever event this is, listen, Arlo food is great. The place is wonderful. The service is exceptional. And that icing on the cake is somebody who's playing music that's absolutely perfect for the occasion, which is what you did for me. I'm glad we met. And I hope this is the start of a beautiful friendship because I really
First,
love you, man. You're just amazing.
same. I hope that we have some more conversations off the camera because I think that's the most important thing with entrepreneurship is relationships and life is relationships. And I'm so happy that you came up to me and you shared about your experiences with music, your son and I would love to meet him one day too. Sounds like a
Is
brilliant music.
you would love him.
I love to.
Dudley, thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll
Take
be in
care.
touch.
Bye.